Okay, well, welcome to the waste and material subgroup meeting. I will just do the facilitation since it's a small group. So I guess for a roll call, we have Kavi Chakshi,
Here.
Kelly Jensen,
Here.
and Serena Dietrich is absent. And then as our first order of business, we have the minutes from the last public working group meeting we had on January 26th. So would anyone like to move to adopt those minutes?
Yeah, I didn't have any feedback on them, so I can make them a motion.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. And then a second. Or Kavi, did you have any feedback on them?
No, I'm just real quick, just skimming them just to give it a glance at least before I second it. I will second that.
Okay. And then I don't know if we need a vote when the person who made the motion and the second. But just to cover our bases, can we have a vote to approve the minutes? All in favor of approving the minutes? Okay, thank you. Okay, cool. So we're gonna jump over the Community Innovation Fund program proposal until Serena shows up, which hopefully should be about halfway through the meeting. So the other discussion we wanted to have today is just kind of following up on that general, like what's next, what are the next steps for this working group? And I'm just going to pull up some slides because in the last meeting, we started this discussion and we had a couple of ideas. But the other thing that we talked about, so we discussed, we had kind of three different general ideas. So I wanted to kind of follow up with you guys on those and see if there's like one or two of those you guys really want to hone in on moving forward with, or if you don't feel ready to hone in on, just kind of like work planning to figure out like, okay, how do we decide what to hone in on? Like, is there some more research you guys want to do or talk to more people? But the other thing that came up at the last meeting was a question around better understanding, like just what community-wide outreach and education already takes place related to waste in general. And we're focused on food waste and multifamily recycling here, but they kind of all happen together. And so I had said that I would try to figure that out by now. And we did. Just yesterday, we received our opportunity to recycle report, which is the report that we file every year with the DEQ, which outlines all of our community-wide education. So I thought that would be the best place to kind of inventory, like, what is it that we're doing? We didn't receive it until yesterday, so I didn't have time to really, basically it's been a little bit hard. It's been hard for me to get like a really full picture in a way that I could like explain it all to you, but I have had a couple of good conversations. And one of the conversations that I had was with, there is a newer municipal manager for Public Services. And the majority of the outreach and education that happens in the community happens directly through our two franchise waste haulers, which is Republic Services, which was formerly Ben Garbage, and then Cascade Disposal. And so they're really the ones that lead the outreach and education because they're the ones that have that direct interface with all of the residential all the customers in Bend, residential and commercial. And then they also have relationships to, in some cases, they do hire out the environmental center to support some of their outreach the same way that the county does. But they're also, because they're they also have those relationships. So they're the ones that have the best picture of like, what is everything that is done. And they actually reached out recently because we've been doing certain outreach and education things. But it's all really good timing, I think, because there's been kind of like just a bunch of standard stuff that we've done for the last many years. That kind of has changed a little bit over the years. Like when we expanded compost, they kind of did like to accept all materials, or all food materials, like it changed a little bit as the service offerings have changed, but generally speaking, I think it's been just kind of consistent for quite some time. But they're at a point where they're also thinking like about just amplifying some of the programs and doing more and doing no things. So they have actually recently initiated some discussions with us to talk about potential ideas that they have and how we can collaborate together to like expand outreach and education related to waste. Like literally in the last month, those conversations came up. And so I think it's really good timing because of course the city through the CCAP, we're also interested in expanding those offerings, but we would like I told them, I was like, our council really looks to our advisory committee to kind of advise on those and to propose those. And so what I would like to do is just connect that conversation, you know, just connect you guys with the waste haulers and have that conversation all together. And they're actually also planning on at some point going to council this spring to kind of like start to raise this discussion with the council as well about some new ideas they have for like waste diversion programming. And so as a next step on that front, they are actually interested. Republic Services has kind of been leading this conversation, but they have also been talking with Cascades Disposal. So I think we would bring them both in, and they want to come in to one of your guys' next meetings and give a presentation and then have a discussion. And so I asked her for an outline of kind of what the presentation would be. And so this is what she proposed, is that it would be first just an overview of the waste and collection systems in Bend, which like I think you guys have a little bit of a feel for because we've been doing this work, but it would be kind of like in one time from the haulers, like an explanation of the system, also like about how our franchise works in the city, which I think will be helpful because it helps, like we rely on the waste haulers to do all this service delivery and outreach and education, which is all kind of dictated by our franchise, or that relationship is established by the franchise. So they'll kind of talk about that, which will help us better understand like what levers do we have to pull at the city and how are those relationships structured. And then the second section would be like their education and engagement. So what have they historically done? What are some opportunities they're working on now? And then what do they see as opportunities for the future? And then she also wants to talk about the changes that they're expecting to see as a result of the Recycling Modernization Act, which will be good. Because again, that's stuff that like Covey, I know you and I have looked into and like we have a little bit of a sense, but the waste haulers have been following it much more closely and they're like in those rulemaking committees and that sort of thing. Anyway, so they've been thinking about this proactively. So that's kind of what they want to come in. So they would first like share the stuff out, but then the rest of the meeting would just be an opportunity to kind of start discussing and brainstorming, like based on you know what we've heard from them and any questions you guys have. So I was thinking that could be a good place to kind of like recenter, like, you know, we've got the one initiative with the Community Innovation Fund, but there's all these other ideas. And I think the three ideas that you guys brought up last time, all I think are potential ideas we could discuss with them, but we can kind of like place them within the context of like what's happening now, like what is the system now, what's happening and what's being done, and how might these things fit into our new requirements for Recycling Modernization Act. And then that might help us prioritize like which of those we should really hone in on. And we can get their feedback on that too, like as them being an important stakeholder. So that was kind of what we were thinking as far as like maybe getting this group together in another month from now. So anyway, do you guys have any thoughts or reactions to that? And also, if you guys are open to this meeting, I'm curious, like if you guys have specific items, this was kind of a proposed outline, but if there's like specific questions that you would like to make sure they cover up front, I mean, you could ask them in a Q&A too, but anyway, any thoughts?
Yeah, I love this idea. I mean, we met with the landfill, so this is, you know, thinking about the material flow itself. This is it's a great missing piece for us to learn a little bit more, especially when the landfill said, you know, one of the gaps or challenges they're facing is hauling availability, or like the trucks to haul.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be a great conversation.
Cubby?
I just wanted to double check. I think we got a call-in listener. Are we sure that's not Serena?
Let me see. I did not.
I don't know if she had called in, but it's on the attendee side, so I don't know. But
I don't think there's a reason she would call in, and I think she would text me.
Got it.
If that was her, because she had been texting me just like up until a few minutes ago.
Okay, just want to double check.
Yeah.
And think I agree with Kelly's point. I just want to double check that meeting that we had. It's been a little bit of time, but who was that with?
We met with the county,
Okay, that's what.
the county staff, and then we met with, it was honestly an oversight because I had recommended upfront that we talk with the county staff and then with the environmental center. And that's because the county is like, they're like the solid waste authority, for lack of a better, they're not technically a solid waste authority, but they're the solid waste department for the region. And then I know that they rely on the environmental center to do a lot of outreach and education, which is why I brought those two together. And what I just kind of failed to acknowledge was that we do actually rely on the waste haulers to do a ton of the outreach and education directly. And putting together this opportunity to recycle report kind of reminded me of that, because we have historically relied on them to put a lot of our information together. And anyway, so it kind of fits with that same system, but they're the ones that yeah, and especially just what the Republics had turnover recently, and they've all, they've kind of gone through an evolution too, because it was Ben Garbage and then it was Republic, and the transition from Ben Garbage to Republic has kind of gone through a couple of structural iterations. And so now they kind of seem to be settling that out a little bit. And so just in the last couple of months, I've seen a lot more like proactive thinking about programming that I didn't really necessarily see before in the same way. And so I think that's why it didn't occur to me last time, even though they would have always had all the information about like what's being done.
Got it. And I guess so I think that meeting would be really helpful. Even like, I don't think I have at least had a more in-depth overview or like opportunity to get familiar with not landfill. I know we got some information from the county, but I know they do sometimes to the environmental center or the landfill itself organizes field trips or like opportunities to go there and kind of like see it in person and see the process and stuff, which I think would be helpful just as we're going through this whole process to get a full like big picture look. But I think this next meeting you're mentioning, Cassie, I think that would be really helpful to meet with like Republic Services and get some of that information. My only I guess some additional questions I have then is I'm still trying to understand, because Republic Services is a private company, and I'm trying to understand, do they have incentives or disincentives to reduce waste apart from the RMA? Like is there like part of does it help them financially to reduce waste, or does it hurt them?
I mean, it's a good question for them.
Okay.
I mean, they obviously receive money from garbage service, but they charge for recycling the same way they charge for trash. It's not like we don't have, like in some communities I've seen garbage haulers set it up where like you pay, well, maybe I actually don't remember exactly how the pay is structured here. I know in some communities you like pay for your trash and then the other things are free. I don't think that's how we do it here. There's pros and cons to doing it that way anyway, because people aren't sometimes incentivized to just put stuff in the recycling that shouldn't be. But anyway, I think it would be a good question to ask them. I mean, it reminds me of like similar conversations we've had with utilities, because electric utilities are also private companies. Like Pacific Power is literally owned by Berkshire Hathaway. And so, we have these questions about like, if you're advocating, helping us reduce energy use, like how does that work out for you? So I think that's a fair question to ask them.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm totally looking forward to that meeting. So I think that's a good idea to set that up. I would be interested in that. I just mentioned that to like be clear-headed going into some of these meetings with private companies to kind of acknowledge that our interest is to help the city of Bend reduce waste, particularly. Yeah. And sometimes there can be alignment, but just like making sure we're getting other perspectives if needed.
Yeah, and my hunch too is that the waste haulers do more. They don't make money just off of bringing garbage to the landfill. They actually make money from the compost, and they make money from recycling too, because they're the ones that sell our recyclables to different end markets, and they're the ones that own the compost. They're the ones that have been saying that they're trying to find more end users for compost. So I think in their mind, this is what I suspect their response will be, is that like they can potentially recycling could be more profitable for them than landfilling something is. And so they kind of work in all of the waste spaces and just try to optimize it. It's not like they're solely reliant on people's just sending more garbage away.
That's super interesting. So they're relying on the landfill to separate the materials effectively, so they have a good end product to sell, or they separate.
No, so I think this is a good part about what we'll learn is that Republic, my understanding is that Republic manages so Republic takes the recycling and takes the garbage, and they take the garbage to the landfill. And my understanding is that the county doesn't even see the county does not have a role in the recycling. Republic Services takes the recycling and sends it to the end markets. I want to confirm that because it's been a little while since I've discussed with them at length about this, but my recollection is that they own the recycling depot and they're the ones that find end markets to send the recycling to. And I know they do that for the compost as well. So the compost facility is at the landfill, but Republic Services manages it. So Deschutes County has offered the space to them.
Super
and
interesting. So
again,
number one will be really helpful on the outline of presentation.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And so I think that's exactly why she wants to start the conversation with like, how does the waste and collection system work? And that's why it'll be helpful too, as we're trying to develop new programming, to like better understand what those relationships are, so that we know like who can be what kind of partner.
Okay.
And I guess a quick question, I don't think this falls here, but I think in the past, Cassie, you mentioned that we don't really have a very good sense in Deschutes County. There hasn't been like an inventory of waste or anything done. It's very expensive or complicated to do that.
You can do it. They had one scheduled for the middle of 2020. And then with COVID, they canceled it because the waste early in the pandemic, the waste that was coming in looked completely different than the waste pre-pandemic. And they thought it was going to be a non-representative sample. So they like waited a while to like see if the waste normalized. It never quite went back to how it used to be, but it's kind of at a new normal. So now they're moving forward with it. But I think they tagged on to, there's like a statewide effort and they tagged on to that. So I don't know I think they're supposed to be doing that this year, but I don't know what the current status is.
And who is doing that? Is that Republic Services, or is that done at the landfill, or is that done at
The county was going to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was going to be like an inventory of the landfill itself, because the landfill is the county, like the county owns the landfill, manages the landfill and all of that. But they wait for Republic Services and Cascade Disposal to bring garbage to the landfill. But as far as like getting it separated, like the county may be able to play a role, because it may be that if there's like an infrastructure solution, it may be that the county can play a role, because they can add an infrastructure, they can add some sort of technology that helps separate all the construction and demolition waste or something. But as it is now, it's like Republic Services, gets the recycling separated, gets the compost separated, and then they bring them to the county's site and they like drop them where they belong. Again, this is like, I'm a little worried because I don't want people to be no one should take what I'm saying as absolute fact, because I'm not, but that's my understanding of how it works. And I think that's what we can get to the bottom of better with them.
Okay, no, I appreciate that.
I had hoped we would with the county, but for some reason, it was long enough ago, I could barely remember what the conversation was like, but I don't think we talked about that type of stuff.
I don't remember them talking about their sorting capabilities or the management of recycling. Yeah.
I remember them mentioning briefly, if I recall correctly, that they didn't have a very good sense of exactly what that breakdown was. They know that they had like rough percentages, I think, referred to in their previous solid waste management plan, which I like mentioned during the meeting. And they were like, well, it kind of like, I think they were saying that they weren't very current, and also they weren't, it wasn't the same as what an inventory would be that they were referring to, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too in the weeds, but just a quick question, because you mentioned this specifically, that COVID had shifted the waste. Was it just more like takeout containers, or what was the shift that they noticed?
It'd be a good question for them, but I think it was mainly I think it was more than that. I think it was like so many people like completely overhauled their homes, so it was like a lot of like furniture, like just it was like everyone was doing every home improvement project at the same time. So it was in addition to just things like, oh, now we have more cardboard boxes and takeout containers. It was also like stuff like that. And just the volume was way more because people were doing projects and stuff.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they commingle with some of the commercial, it'll be super helpful to get that walkthrough from them so we understand where the inflection points are.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, and then I'll go to our other slide because I think these two conversations are kind of related. Because again, just as far as like next steps, I just want to remind us of, I don't want to lose what we talked about last time. So the three kind of concepts that we talked about last time. Well, so one was about doing direct outreach to food trucks and other takeout businesses and also their customers to educate about different takeout food containers specifically. And I think we kind of talked about that being like helping restaurants and food trucks understand like what's actually, like the truth about compostable products and what might be a good product, but then also helping them being able to communicate that to customers so that if they make those changes, they're not getting like reprimanded for them. And then kind of related to that, there was this idea of establishing a purchasing co-op for local businesses, which could help everyone kind of source from the same supplier, which would help bring more consistency. I think the idea behind that was to bring more, one, to help people buy the right materials, but two, to also bring more consistencies among like the various takeout and food truck places in Bend. So those two were kind of related, but establishing a purchasing co-op is like a pretty specific and large initiative. So we pulled that out separately just to acknowledge that that's like, kind of a big add-on. And then the third one is kind of more general. That was more about that question about just generally additional programs to help educate the residents community-wide, because the comment was that the Community Innovation Fund is a good step in that direction, but it's kind of limited in scope. And we want to like try to be thinking about programming where we can actually make sure to be talking to the whole community. And that's the one that I think, that one in particular is the one that I think we will be able to kind of identify what those opportunities are. I think the conversation with the waste hauler will be a first step in identifying what those opportunities are.
Yeah,
So anyway, do you guys have thoughts on like, are there any of these that, do you want to have the conversation with the county before we decide how to move forward with these? Or are there any of these that you guys feel like you want to move forward with in some way? And so you have a recommendation for how we, if there's like people we want to talk to as a next step to explore those further? Or what are your thoughts on how to move forward with these?
Go ahead, Kavi.
I have a lot of thoughts. So if you have any, Kelly, you want to share first, I'm happy to.
I've just been thinking about the meeting with the haulers will be helpful to understand, like if they're commingling, for example, the compostables with commercial, then that's one more data point that helps this first bullet, which is like all of this material is coming together. So making sure that whether it's labeling or collection or the materials that they're using, that it's not just residential, but that we're actually thinking about this kind of systematically. So I would love to pursue all of these. I'm indifferent as to whether that timeline is post meeting with the haulers. I don't know that there's another required meeting with the community or with the county. But Kavi, I'll defer to you.
Yeah, I think these are really good ideas and from the last meeting, and I think some of these were brought up by you, Kelly. So when I was reading through just the meeting minutes, I think the one thing that I just wanted to mention, especially, oh sweet, Serena, it's here, was I think some of the meeting minutes seem to imply that there are a lot of options for recyclable or compostable foodware or drinkware, and I think that's not the case right now. I think there might be more opportunities with RMA, but especially as I've like settled in more into my temporary role at the Rethink Waste project, I want to kind of make sure we're not forgetting kind of the reduce and reuse aspects of like, how do we, is there like, like, I think it's a last step to like see if we can recycle and compost the foodware and drinkware, but can we emphasize more of like, how do we, can we brainstorm and see if there's ways to get maybe more restaurants or cafes to get to reusable foodware and drinkware? And there have been some cool pilots that were, I think I'd mentioned before, had been tried here in Bend, but Impact was one of the startups that had gotten these reusable things, and they were working with food carts to like get them to use them and have like a washing program with them and everything. And so there's a lot of logistics to figure out there. But I do think that if you're really trying to make the most impact, that would be the way to kind of go, instead of just like saying I think there's a little bit of, no matter what solution we use, if it's recycling or composting, it's still not as good as if it's something that's reusable. So to my mind, at least, and some of these things like I've worked on in the past, so they've been kind of passion projects for a while, but just that from my perspective, at least, I feel like plastic cups for like beer and drinks, coffee cups, and then takeout containers, plastic utensils, like all of those are like single use things. And some of those, like, especially like, I can almost imagine like, if we can just work with breweries to see like what does it take to go from plastic cups to like reusable plastic cups or whatever, something else that's reusable. And then maybe work with all the coffee shops to see, is there some kind of, this is a very early idea brainstorm, but is there some kind of system where we could have all the coffee shops agree to like have a borrowing kind of system where you pay once and then you get this coffee cup and then you can like borrow from one coffee shop and return to another, and they'll take care of the washing part of it, if that makes sense, kind of. So that's a very early stage idea, but just something along those lines of like,
Serena has some good industry insight into that one she wants to share.
yeah, I'll pause there. Go ahead, Serena.
No, I wanted to wait till you were done. And I apologize, you guys, that I'm so late. I actually just came from our state sustainability board meeting and they asked me to chair it today because Secretary Fagan had an injury and she had surgery yesterday. So she wasn't able, and I was kind of like, normally I would have popped off that to come into this and then pop back on, but
No worries.
So just so you guys know, I'm sorry there, but literally I was our conversation of today in that call was Corvallis. So it was all about, well, and Travel Oregon and the Oregon Lottery, but the majority of it was City of Corvallis and all the entities within it. And they do have a fully functional, reusable takeout program that is, and they've been using it for a while. And it's kind of like I'm pretty sure it's probably an online app too, or something you put on your phone, but you get a card, kind of like the bottle drop in a way, where you get a card, you're a member and you have drop points and you use it. We didn't get to talk in depth. They had a lot to say about the different things that they're doing, but it wouldn't hurt to talk to them specifically and just see, I forget what they named it. Like, I think it's Bento or something based on their county name, but yeah, definitely a good starting point. And they just showcased like takeout, trays, but I can't imagine that we couldn't add stainless steel cups and other things that other entities could use for beverage related and everything else. I will say, as a beer connoisseur, the worst thing is to drink out of a plastic cup. Just from a functional standpoint, like I just don't like it. It doesn't feel, it's just the nature of the beast when you're outside. But stainless steel is a good alternative to that versus glass. So, and it's light and it's easy to clean, hard to damage. So I think there's some opportunity there.
That's good to hear.
To at least learn about it. Understand it
for sure. Yeah. I didn't realize Corvallis had a program like that.
I didn't either. I know that there was some out there, and I know Portland has one too, but I think Corvallis might be a better learning experience for organization, like from a municipality that similar size.
Do you know, Serena, what the role of this local government has been in facilitating that?
So actually the group that presented on that is similar. It's their sustainability coalition. So it's similar to the Environmental Center. It's a nonprofit organization that implemented it as part of a grant program, but it is supported by the city. on different levels. You know, I don't, again, we didn't get the full detail of that program. It's just one highlight and one success story of the different things that they were doing. And it made me, I was like, oh my gosh, I have a call like in 2 hours on this topic that we can talk through. So, but I agree with you, Covey, that we should think about ways to eliminate altogether as before, you know, substituting in less than optimal options as well. And I'm just coming in without having any history of what you guys all just talked about. So
No, that was great. It was that's a really good. I wasn't aware of that program either, and that's nice to have a good example. Covey, I know you had some more thoughts. I'd like to transition to our other topic in a couple of minutes because that's kind of where we have a decision point today. But Covey, did you have a couple of other like high level thoughts you wanted to share?
No, I think that was the main one. I can shelve the other ones for maybe the next discussion. Nothing comes to mind, but I think that was really helpful what Serena just shared because I don't know that program either. And I think we could be creative about how to do that because I'm sure Cassie, you're already thinking of like how would the city go about doing that? So if there's some way to partner with nonprofit organizations or even business associations to make it like this partnership or kind of figure out what best role ECC in the city would take for that, because I know that can sound like a big program. So I just want to say I'm open to brainstorming what that looks like, but I think there's a lot of potential there.
We're all familiar with Visit Ben's sustainability grant program too. I know we talked about that, and I know they have different windows of when you can apply, but I feel like a program like that would be a really good position to work with them on. I think that would be.
Yeah, that's really.
I mean, it aligns in so many ways with what they offer and residential versus tourism and everything else. Just a thought.
I agree. Plus, there's also the Visit Central Oregon is also creating like basically the same fund, and that one will be probably more competitive because it's for all Central Oregon. But I guess the point is that there's definitely I agree that those are really good programs to think about. What I would recommend then on all of these topics, so on the reusable, but also this applies to these ideas we had from last meeting that we were talking about, is I would recommend as a next step, it sounds like there's just kind of a lot of fact finding to do at this stage, which might be talking to Corvallis, it might be talking to coffee shops, it might be talking to food trucks or breweries. And what I think would be the best way to kind of move forward quickly would be for you guys individually as committee members to just go start doing some of that research, because that's kind of fact finding stuff that we don't necessarily have to do like as a group. And I think that's probably how we can move forward from going from this, you know, kind of talking about these concepts to figuring out how we can make it a reality. It's just not something that I have capacity to look into myself, but kind of, you know, that's one of the benefits of breaking up into working groups, is that it allows you guys to go do some of that firsthand research yourself, and then we can talk about it in one of our future meetings. Does that sound okay?
That does. I had a quick just question in terms of process, Cassie.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in this. So I would love to do some fact finding, including reaching out to Corvallis, and maybe we can, for fact finding, it's okay to partner with the other members of this group and go on some of those meetings together because we're just getting information, right?
Definitely.
Okay. And I guess one organization I would like to get information from is also the Rethink Waste Project and the Environmental Center. So is that okay if I'm doing that for that part of it?
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're just, because it's just knowledge that you're bringing, like from your perspective now, you're kind of someone who like works in industry and you'll be able to bring that forward. But that's you know, that's I think what all committees do to some extent, is they kind of pull from their direct experiences. And so, yeah, there's no problem that, if you're just getting information, it's totally fine. That's the answer.
You cut out for me, Cassie. I don't know if.
Oh, weird. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it's just.
Basically, long story short is yes, that's totally fine, because you're just finding information, and it's fine for you to pull from your direct experiences in your job or your life anyway. Okay, cool. And then Serena, we can debrief more fully later, but related to that note, what we had talked about before you came on is that as a next step, we're actually going to invite the waste haulers to come in They have actually approached me because they're interested in kind of having these proactive discussions about waste diversion programming. And they want to give this kind of an outline of a presentation they want to give, which would talk about like kind of how the waste system works in Bend, what is their current state for like community-wide education and engagement, and then kind of use that together to brainstorm like what community-wide ideas there can be.
I think that's great, and I agree with it. I will say too, Republic Services was also one of the funders for the program in Corvallis, the
Oh,
food,
cool, that's great.
just FYI. And I sent Covey the link via text because we can't chat here, but.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Well, with that, I'd like to go back to our initial topic, and I don't actually have any slides for it, so I'm just going to stop sharing. But okay, so moving on to the next topic is we received a formal proposal from the Environmental Center about the Community Innovation Fund, and it outlines the same thing that we talked about.
Sorry, Cassie, before you
yeah.
start, should I go ahead and do it right now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm just gonna recuse myself again from this part of the meeting. And is this the last part then? Should I just drop off?
Yeah, that'd be fine if you'd like to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just mute myself, hide my camera. I won't be part of this meeting anymore. I'm just out of an abundance of consideration for any appearance of conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you, Kavi. Okay. So the proposal is, it reflects the same thing that they shared with us, but they gave us kind of 3 different like levels of investment, which is 21,800, 30,520, and 41,965. So I guess, especially since we don't have a ton of time, I'll just open it to hearing your guys' thoughts about whether you want to move forward. It's at the last meeting you guys both share that you did want to move forward with funding it, but it was kind of a matter of like making sure it's really clear what we're funding. And then we also want to decide on a level. So I'll open the floor to that for you guys. The one additional thing I'll add is that we do have budget to support really any 3 of these levels, like around $40,000 was kind of what we had held. And the last 2,000, I'm sure we have capacity for. So that's something you can keep in mind. That's our budget for this biennium, which is over on June 30th. We do not have budget in future bienniums, allocated now. So anyway,
and if we don't use it, it doesn't carry over. It's just
Correct.
lost. Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, so any initial thoughts on moving forward with this?
Well, I did, when I was looking through it, one of the biggest, I guess, changes or discrepancies between those 3 levels is the showcase event. And so I was just gonna point out, is that something that would be super important to us, or is that something that we can just eliminate option C from automatically, or is that like a no-brainer, we need to do it, so that's our only option? I mean, in terms of obviously monetarily wise, they're all changing a little bit, but that's one of the options that is either there or not there based on that group. And that is sorry, I lost my train of thought. Too much in my brain today.
I'm sure if you just came off of like several hour other committee meeting.
I've been doing it since 8 a.m. But yeah, no, I came prepared for this call, and I didn't note why I was gonna.
Well, Kelly, do you want to respond to kind of that first question from Serena? Because that's up to you guys.
Yeah.
The first question being, is the CIF showcase event worth the 3,000?
Yeah.
I mean,
Or like, is that event like something that's like a must have?
well, there's also additional funding in others. right? So a couple, or I guess maybe it's all related to the showcase event, like there's 2,000 more in program management staff,
Mhm.
Yeah, that's true.
5,000 more in grant awards to projects. And they do 5,000 max per project. So it's one additional project potentially.
And I do think it would definitely be possible for us, you know, they kind of gave these so that we had something to work with,
Right.
but it would be possible. For you guys to say like option C, but we don't want to do the showcase event. And then, you know, like if you wanted to do like, okay, we want to do 4 projects like at 20,000, but we just don't want to do the showcase event. I think we could do that. And they may adjust some of those other things a little bit if there was some built into the
Right.
hours built in, but I think that would be doable and we would know the general dollar amount.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like that idea. And if we didn't do I don't know enough about the showcase event just from this, but if we didn't do that, that's 3,000 and maybe we're able to direct that 3,000 to a 6th project or an additional project that may have more impact.
Yeah, I don't want to discount what the showcase event could or couldn't do. I just, I'm trying to be diligent about where we're putting our money, and making sure that whatever we are doing is creating action. And it is important to showcase success too. I'm not saying that that's not the case, because that's just as important, in making the actions happen. But I also feel like maybe in our first run, we just kind of see where things go with the actions that we're creating, and the work that's being done before spending some extra dollars on that. But that's just top level thinking. Oh yeah, I found it. So it's the showcase is an event that supports the sustainability awards, highlighting past project success and sharing in those community successes. So I think all of this is pretty important. And if we were to dial it down, I would say something between B and C, where we don't spend money on the showcase this time around. But that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I support that.
I think now is a time with the money that we have, if we have the funding, that we should put as much into our partner resources as we can, because there's just a lot to do. And we keep saying that we want to do more and we want to be actionable. And we have this opportunity to kind of do that with a group that's already very active. We picked them for that specific reason, for their knowledge and their experience and their, foot on the ground in the community. So I say, let's use it.
Okay. Okay, so what I've heard so far is that you would like to recommend that we move forward at a level, basically, it kind of sounds like basically C minus the showcase event. Would that be accurate?
That's the way I'm thinking.
Yeah, I support that. I think that and if we can apply that money to another project, a project award.
Okay, so you guys are comfortable kind of going up to that dollar amount, like a little over 40,000, but would prefer that the funds be allocated to more awards rather than the showcase event.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think what I can do then, I think it should be easy enough for them to, that's a straightforward enough change that I think we can move forward. And then what I'll do is in between now and then, I'll just ask them if they could give us like a revised version that we can share with the full committee.
Yeah.
And just because this is kind of like an actual recommendation, I think it'd be good if we could do like a motion and a second.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, Yeah, and I think this document is great, just revising that showcase line item and removing the A, B, and C option, or A and B option, and leave C as just kind of the main focus. And if the board, we can obviously have this document in the background if the board or the committee, excuse me, feels otherwise, we can go from there. But
Okay.
If I hadn't seen anything and I was part of the committee, I may ask for examples of prior projects, so I know that what we're contributing to or what an example might be.
Mhm.
yeah,
I
which
don't know
we
if we
have
can-
in past slide decks, right?
They did, yep.
Yeah, so we can just maybe have a couple slides in our committee presentation that just pull a couple from there that
I think that'd be great. Yeah.
As
we don't
as
have to
an
recreate it.
appendix.
The work's been done. We just, if
Yeah.
there are correct questions that pop up, we can say these are examples of.
Yep. Appendix, that's always nice. I throw a lot of stuff in my deck appendix.
Okay. What I might even do, I don't know if this will be possible because we don't have, it's not a huge advance notice, but I might ask Udara and or Lindsay if they would just if they would want to just come to the meeting to give, and even just like a 5-minute presentation. And that way, when the committee, so the next step would be that you guys would recommend to the committee, which you'll need to do. So we'll talk about that in a minute, and then, but I think the committee, I'm guessing, will feel the most comfortable deciding on the recommendation themselves if they've just, it'll be better communicated directly from them since they're the actual program providers. So I might see if they can be there even just virtually to answer questions, and they could give like a quick kind of pitch about it. Does that sound appropriate to you guys?
I think if they have the time and are willing to take a few minutes, that wouldn't hurt.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
great.
the committee knows that we've already done a lot of this work and this is where we're at. So it shouldn't come as a surprise, but having them to help, discuss any questions.
Okay. And if not, if they're unavailable, then I'll pull from the slides that they have. And then for the meeting itself, I can kind of just do like, this is the program that was proposed to us. And then I would turn it over to you guys to like give your share your recommendation with the group. Do you think that would work okay?
Mhm.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Well then, I guess, do we have a motion to move forward with recommending funding the Community Innovation Fund as proposed in option C minus the community showcase event to the ECC?
I'll make the motion.
I second the motion
Okay.
described.
And then is there any final discussion?
No.
Okay, and then all in favor? Raise your hand. Okay, well, perfect. Okay, so that's great. So then, yeah, like we said, next steps will be to bring this to the full committee. Our agenda for next week with the full ECC is a little packed, so I'm a little worried about that. But
I can't imagine that this will take very long, but it's
Yeah.
also up to, the chairs if we put this maybe towards the front and just get it out of the way. But
yeah, I will talk with Covey. I don't know if you're there still, but I know that we have not scheduled our prep meeting yet. I'm gonna
Sorry.
text Neil.
I'm still here.
Anyway, I think that's a good idea. I'll ask, we'll look back through the the agenda and we'll figure out if it makes sense to just do it kind of earlier on. And especially if we have the environmental staff come, it's kind of nice for them to be
Yeah.
first, because then they don't have to wait.
yeah, I trust your guys's, I forget what's all on it, but whatever you guys think is best.
Okay. Covey, I'm gonna text, once we get off from here, I'm just gonna text you and Neil so we can try to, I don't know, we can't track down Neil right now for a prep meeting. Unless you've seen him.
I haven't, but I'll text him too.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Well, then I think we're good as far as next steps for this group. So we'll bring the recommendation to the full committee, get the updated scope from the environmental center. I'm hopeful that they can turn that around kind of quickly. And then we'll have that next meeting with the waste haulers, and then you all can start beginning to do some of that further research into some of those project topics. And then we'll try to meet again in about a month, I think would be good.
Yeah.
We can we'll have at the next meeting, we should have 2 new committee members. Serena, were you absent from the last meeting or were you there?
No, I was there. I think I
Okay.
left like 8 minutes early or something.
Okay, I'm just trying to remember if anyone, because Kersey resigned. We're down to 10 committee members. Anyway, but we're gonna have 2 new committee members. What I was trying to get at is we could also see at this point if any of the new committee members are interested in joining this group or not.
I think it'd be a good point to bring people in. We've already done this. It's kind of that next phase, like you said.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you done the topic? Can I unrecuse myself for the end?
Yeah, yes, you
Okay.
can.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful to have another committee member, especially because I am recusing myself, but also because we seem to be taking some more larger projects or maybe looking at bigger projects. It'll be nice to have one more committee member, maybe 2. I don't know.
Well, and I think it'll be important, even though Cassie will be a liaison between, the group that's taking on this role. There's probably work that this committee will have to do back and forth to kind of review summaries or status updates or different things that will happen throughout the course of the project.
Yeah.
Kind of on that topic, we talked about individually soliciting information from businesses. Are there certain questions that we want to be sure we're asking kind of consistently?
That's a good question. Should we just communicate, the 3 of us, and kind of see like if we want to either tag team or split and like focus on different businesses or different?
Yeah, I think it would help for us because I don't want to reach out to somebody and then you guys, one of you already did, or and there is probably a set of questions that are more general that help start the discussion. I can think of top of mind, like, what's your biggest hurdle in using reusable cups for, I mean, there's for events or whatever, hurdles, opportunities, what that looks like. So yeah, I think that would be good for us to deliberate.
That's a good point for us to do the fact finding.
Yeah. So you guys can coordinate amongst yourselves with that, but just CC me on any of those emails. It's just helpful in that way I know who you're talking to. And yeah, but when you're doing that, again, just be sure to be like in fact finding mode.
Yes, it is just fact finding. Is that okay, Cassie, if we have a shared like Google Doc that we use as a fact finding tracker or something like that where
Yeah, I think if it's the 3 of you and it's just purely like listing out information that you've learned, that should be fine.
Yeah, I just picture it like the the organization we talk to, or if we have a list in mind, we can put them all down and we can each assign ourselves 1 or 2 and then make notes as we have those conversations, just to keep information in one spot as we do that fact finding.
Yeah.
I think that sounds great. And one quick question, Cassie, the meeting with the race taller, is that at our next subgroup meeting or is that like a separate meeting?
No, I was thinking just at the next subgroup meeting. And I'll have to think, I might just make it a public meeting. I don't really see why not.
I think it's better, especially because we're meeting with like a
Big
independent business.
player.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Well then, I think we can adjourn the meeting. If everyone agrees.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
you all for
you.
your time today.
Productive and on time.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.